And we're live again one more time here. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, South Florida. We got our producer here behind the scenes with us today. And my name is Andy within South Florida, and we are here as we are every single week with Michelle and Maribel. Michelle Hasbun and Maribel Mendoza from Hasbun and Mendoza Family Law. Good morning, ladies.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Boy, we're all bright and cheery this morning.
Yes.
Always.
So this is the first time that you're watching us, folks. Tune in and go ahead and share, because these ladies, wow, simply amazing. Today's topic, though, is domestic violence and restraining order. Welcome, Melinda, to the broadcast. Melinda is watching us here. Welcome, welcome. So we encourage you to share this broadcast today. We're talking about domestic violence and restraining order. And I know in the past we've talked about different areas of family law and some beautiful, beautiful topics on adoption and reuniting the families. But all is not always well.
Exactly right.
So how does domestic violence and restraining order come into effect here?
It could happen in a divorce setting. It could happen in a paternity setting. It could happen in settings where there are people that are not even living together. There are different ways that domestic violence can come about. Domestic violence is the act that is being done upon a person, and the restraining order is the document that the person is seeking in court to help protect them against that person committing that act.
So domestic violence, and I know that this is a whole topic here that we could really get into at a future broadcast, but just briefly, if anybody is wondering, what is domestic violence exactly? Is it mental? Is it physical? Is it online? I mean, just real brief.
Well, actually, I think that initially it was a bit more limited in scope in terms of, there was an actual almost requirement of physical violence or a prior physical act. What is really the language in the statute is that you have to feel that you are in imminent danger of bodily harm, and the way that is determined is prior acts of violence. There was an act of violence now, and then there's different spectrums. There's also, which we touched on before, cyber stalking. So that is what you refer to as online,
right?
And that falls under obviously so domestic violence encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses harassment, stalking, physical abuse, a litany of things, and then there are subcategories as to how those things are defined as a matter of law, and what you would have to put in a petition in order to get a restraining order or an injunction against that aggressor or perpetrator for that victim.
This almost sounds like we could do a couple of broadcasts on domestic violence alone and the different subcategories, the world of online. I mean, I can imagine that's huge. But we will leave that for another topic in the future. By the way, folks, we're live. If anybody has any questions, we welcome you to type them on the chat. We have the ladies here, and we will definitely answer any questions you have. You can also, if you're watching us on the replay, you can type in a question in the chat, and they will get back to you. So let's say that somebody has in mind, hey, I feel that maybe I'm a victim. How can somebody go about getting a restraining order?
Typically what ends up happening is a person will go to the courthouse, and there is a clerk there, an intake clerk, who will take down all the allegations that person has. That person will sit there, that alleged victim will sit there and read the allegations to make sure that they're factually correct, sign off on everything that the intake clerk prepares. That intake clerk goes ahead and provides it to the judge that's there on call, and that judge reviews it. If on the face of that document the judge feels that there is a reason for a temporary restraining order, then that judge will sign a temporary restraining order and give the parties usually it's about 15 days after, the opportunity to go to a final hearing. The person who is the alleged perpetrator does not know at the time usually that alleged victim is doing that.
Wow.
That alleged perpetrator will be served with that temporary restraining order, and that restraining order says, you will be coming in here with all your victims on such and such date and such time in front of this judge, and then that alleged perpetrator has the right to go to that final hearing and bring all the witnesses that he believes are necessary, the documents, text messages, videos, whatever it is that person believes is necessary to be able to prove that the allegations that are placed in that restraining order are false. So they do have the opportunity at a final hearing to be heard, but initially they do not know.
Yeah, initially it's like, the courts are there to protect. So, most of the time you don't get orders entered by judges without allowing the other person the right to be heard. Those type of orders typically require something really extraordinary. But the domestic violence system and procedure is set up so that, you're coming in saying, I fear for my life. I fear that I'm in danger. So the court's reaction there in the public policy of the state of Florida is we need to put a protection order in place immediately. Right. And then we're going to put that protection in place, and then we're going to serve the person. The alleged perpetrator is going to get those documents, and then at that point, about 15 days or so later, there's going to be on that document a hearing date where that person that was accused of that violence or being an aggressor will have an opportunity to then defend themselves. So that's typically.
There's a couple of words that I heard there. I mean, I'm in danger of my life. I mean, I'm in imminent. So it's not like you have an argument with your spouse or somebody and you say, I'm going to file a restraining order on you because I don't like you. No.
Right. As a matter of fact, even verbal threats, it depends, because sometimes people will just allege, and a lot of times if you look at the allegations, they're regarding, they left, we were in an argument and they left with the child and they said they're not giving me the child back, and they stayed at their mom's house overnight, and now I'm afraid. That may not necessarily rise to that level unless you have other incidences, other occurrences, history. So verbal threats, not necessarily. It depends the extent. It depends on the history. It depends on what was said, the actions, and everything factually.
Like for instance, if you come at me with a spoon and you say to me, I'm going to kill you, versus if you have a hammer or if you have a knife, or there's a big difference. So there may not necessarily be a physical act that you touched me, but if I am reasonably in fear of imminent danger, that something's going to happen to me based on the allegations, the verbal allegations that you're making against me, then the restraining order should be granted.
So that leads us to the following question: is what are the requirements that are in place to file a restraining order? I mean, it has to get a little detailed, I assume.
Yes, there has to be a reasonable fear of imminent danger, bodily harm. Okay. The fact that you had an argument 3 weeks ago, and in that argument 3 weeks ago, when both of you were very upset,
that's not a reason.
Where's it happened 3 weeks ago. Why am I now seeking a restraining order right now? Where's the imminent danger?
Or is there a history? This is happening each week.
Well, yes, that's certainly something like that.
Yeah, because that would be considered under each week would be a harassive act.
And it's a repetitive act.
And it's repetitive, so that falls under the harassment and the stalking. There are different, like I said, different requirements and different things that are met for each different allegation. But you just have to consider it within the facts and what's going on between these people. I mean, does it seem like this person is in danger, or is being harassed, or is being stalked? Obviously, we said we'd talk about it at a future broadcast, but a lot of something that is commonly happening now is a lot of cyber stalking. With all the technology, the spyware and things like that, which it's really interesting. And there's a new authority coming down on that.
As with other areas of family law that we have discussed on our live streams, there's layers and layers and avenues and roads. Yes. There's nothing simple here.
And the beauty,
it gets complicated.
And the beauty of it is that our law it mainstreams. It goes based on what today's culture is. Whereas maybe 10 years ago, cyberstalking would be something that there was no reason. Now, because of all the media and all the technology, the law is evolving to deal with whatever's happening with the world today. So that's very interesting and very incredible.
And we talked at an earlier broadcast about the trail and the proof that stalking on the web leaves.
Yes, that's
so
exactly
if you missed that one, go back in the history and check that one out. But I'm looking at a future broadcast here.
Yes, on specifically on
domestic violence.
Specifically on.
So there's a question here for one of our viewers: does getting a restraining order affect my right to get child support or alimony? Wow.
Absolutely.
Well, it doesn't necessarily affect your right to get it. As a matter of fact, once you file a domestic violence injunction petition, depending on if you're married or depending on whether you have children with the person that you're filing the injunction against, you can ask for financial relief in the form of child support or alimony. And then typically it's something that's done. Remember, this is, there wasn't notice this in the beginning. When you allege your petition, you're asking for what type of relief. What do you want this judge to do? I want a restraining order, number one, and that's like the 500 feet typically restriction. I want, what type of programs do you want in place do you think would help prevent this? Anger management, some type
substance
of
abuse.
substance abuse intervention.
Right.
So there's different categories, because what the court wants to do is protect you, try to prevent the situation from happening, and then if you have children in common, we want to address this person's going to be out because this restraining order would, let's say it's a couple, they're living together, their marriage is breaking apart, breaking down, so then this would take that person, that perpetrator, husband or wife, out of the house, right? Remove them from the house, and then you have one parent living in the home with the children. So then there's the issue of support.
Right.
The court would address support. So at the time of that hearing, when that person comes back to defend, they're going to be asked to provide some type of financial information, and the court will enter an order saying, and you have to pay so-and-so in child support. Or if you're asking for alimony, you have to pay some alimony. So
that's temporary in nature.
Yeah, temporary.
Right.
Does it affect until there's another order?
Right.
Then typically those individuals, once there's a restraining order, an injunction in place, and the people are married, and there's, especially when there's finances that come into play, and now there's an order that somebody wants to challenge, then they'll typically file the divorce action or a paternity action right after that. So sometimes they go hand in hand, and we will have cases, we'll have divorces, we'll have paternity cases or post-judgment modification cases where they're seeking to change custody or time sharing, where they also have a companion case of domestic violence or a domestic violence injunction case that goes along with it. So it doesn't affect your rights in terms of alimony and child support, but it can be included and addressed.
Right.
Well, it will affect, as Michelle was saying before,
the time sharing. It will affect the time sharing. Right.
As always, folks, very detailed, very detailed. If you're watching us for the first time, I want to welcome Tina, I want to welcome Vanessa, I want to welcome everybody.
Good morning, Tina.
That
Good
is
morning,
guys.
Vanessa.
Tuning in. My name is Andy within South Florida. We're here live at the offices of Hasbun and Mendoza Family Law. We're here with Michelle and Maribel, like we are every single week, talking about cases in family law and very, very interesting topics. Suffice to say that you should not travel this road alone.
Right.
That you should seek the advice of attorneys.
On many reasons. We think of the same. We end up thinking the same things at the same time.
This is not rehearsed, folks. We're actually live here, not rehearsed.
And you know how the question, does it affect, I was just thinking, does it affect the finances? Yes, you can get child support, you can get alimony, but think of a scenario where you're alleging the person is aggressive, is violent because they have some type of mental health issue, and you put that allegation in that petition, then lo and behold, if you are married and you anticipate the divorce is coming, that would affect the alimony, because then now maybe that person can say, well, they know I don't have the ability to work because I have
all these mental health issues
that they've alleged in the domestic violence injunction. So you have to be careful
with what you put in that petition,
right? Because that will affect. So it depends, but it will affect if that's the scenario. Now, so everything is fact intensive. What's the reason? What are you alleging in that petition for us to determine to what extent and if it will affect a sister case or another action, a divorce, a paternity? In that case, for example, if you're saying there's mental health issues, it would affect maybe alimony. Now you have to help this person, support them because you're acknowledging that they have a disability, they can't work, right? Or then it's going to affect the time sharing. You can't say, I want them to be part of my kid's life if now you're saying they have a mental health issue.
Right.
Wow.
You can't say, I want a speedy divorce because I just want to move on, because now you have minor children and you have a
potential disability.
Intricate.
So. And I hate to because you're like you're kind of forcing us for
a clear yes or no.
Yes or no, and unfortunately the answer is it depends.
It depends.
Case
Always
by
in
case
family
basis.
law. Right.
Always consult with an experienced family law attorney who has seen the different fact patterns. Because look at the question. Even Michelle and I, when you're asking as a first impression,
yes,
but we actually have to think it through. So when you're talking to us and you're consulting with us about your life and your situation, that's what we need, because at that point.
Unique.
back.
At that point, we understand your situation, and then we know we can analyze what will apply in this setting, and we always, project that forward. Going forward,
how is that going to affect?
What kind of case can we anticipate? What kind of relief can we anticipate? How will this affect the outcome of that other case?
And let's say that restraining order is granted, and you, as the alleged victim, desperately need the financial assistance of the alleged perpetrator, but that restraining order and the allegations may cause him or her to lose her job. That's something else that you need to take into account.
Wow.
And the pitfalls of filing a petition on your own, a petition for requesting a restraining order, is oftentimes we as human natures tend to have like this vomiting effect that we want to say everything, and
anger,
right? So we have to be careful with that. Not necessarily anger, just like say everything that has ever happened. You don't know how all those intricate details could affect whether it's the restraining order itself, or if there's a child support case, or if there's a paternity case.
Are you the opinion that if somebody is thinking that they're a victim of domestic violence and they're considering a restraining order, to talk first to an attorney?
Always.
Really?
Always.
Okay.
That would
but it depends on.
Always,
it
if you can.
I love this answer.
Obviously, if you can, your life and
that's the reason
your
why.
life, definitely is a priority.
It's more important,
right?
Priority,
So,
in other words, don't hang around for an appointment to talk to you.
Yeah.
If it's
something that is of dire.
Yeah, but typically, if it raises to that level, there was already an incident. Somebody was probably
and
arrested.
There's
there
probably
was a criminal case and a stay away order in that criminal case, and then also as a spin-off to the domestic violence. Maybe the domestic violence injunction would not be a good fit in your case for the considerations that Michelle said.
Right.
A police officer may lose his job if he's found to be guilty of some type of act or whatever. So maybe what you would want instead is to file a divorce petition, and in the divorce petition ask for a civil stay away order, which it doesn't have the same strength and the same ramifications of a domestic violence injunction, but will afford you the protections of having that person stay away from you, sending that very strong message, so it depends.
And safeguarding the employment of the other person.
Right.
Wow, very detailed. We have another question. Restraining orders, adults to minors, same sex?
Yes.
Do they even have to be in a marital relationship to file a restraining order?
Well, no, not a marital relationship.
You do need to have at least 2 incidents of domestic violence within a certain period of time to be able to seek a restraining order.
You have to be an adult? Can you be
an adult could ask for a restraining order on behalf of a child, on behalf of a minor. So there are definitely different types of restraining orders.
And it depends. Like Michelle said, what she's referencing is like a traditional domestic violence injunction, but there are, depending on what you're alleging, you don't necessarily, for some instances, need a prior act. Remember, the circumstances, or if it's under the stalking, it would require different
depending,
things.
on the situation.
And you don't have to be a spouse of the person, but there are, and the statute is very clear as to who you can get an injunction with. Typically, it requires some type of cohabitation or some type of relation where the minor lives, or there's a shared residence there. And the other type of injunction that we have is for a parent on behalf of a child, or what's the terminology, Michelle? I forget. The next of kin, or whatever, on behalf of a minor. So it could be that mom is seeking an injunction against dad for the child, and the allegations there are going to be dad threatened the child with a gun,
committed physical
right. Exactly. So then it would be on the interest for that child.
And that gets more intricate, because now you're involving a child that maybe is going to have this in the future in a file or a record, or there's history of this now. So when that child becomes an adult.
Well,
remember, the child is the alleged victim.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Okay.
So then let's say I'm filing a restraining order on behalf of you, the father of our child. It's not that you're committing an act of domestic violence against me. You're doing it against our child. And what I'm doing as her parent is I'm asking that the court enter a restraining order to protect the child from you.
So a child cannot file a restraining order against a parent?
The child is going to file the restraining order. Well, it's going to be in the for the child, but the parent,
right.
The parent.
or guardian
Okay.
or legal guardian will be filing that petition
on that behalf,
of that.
Right.
Or unless it's in a totally different sphere that
which is
Michelle and I
dependency.
don't do, which is dependency court, then the state would file,
but those are different allegations.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
So in what we do, the kind of domestic violence injunctions that we handle, it's typically filed for that minor child by a legal guardian, which is typically mom or dad.
Okay. Okay. So it has to be that somebody has to have a relationship. They need to be cohabitating, have a child. If a business owner, for example, a customer that goes in there a couple times a week and says, hey, I don't like your service, I'm going to kill you. A business owner cannot file a restraining order on a regular individual.
Well, remember what we're talking about are family domestic
issues.
violence situations.
That person
however, there are, for example, stalking. Remember, it falls under totally different things. Okay. But that would probably be more like a criminal case.
It's a criminal act.
Rises to that level.
Right.
But the cyber stalking statute is a bit looser. It doesn't require that you have to be married, but there are certain requirements regarding the relationship.
Very, very interesting. Folks, if you're just tuning in, Andy within South Florida, we're here with Maribel and Michelle. We have been talking about domestic violence and restraining orders, everything you need to know. Due to the nature of this broadcast, obviously, they cannot answer all the questions, and there's a lot to cover. So we welcome you to contact them for a consultation and learn if you feel that you may have been a victim or you are a victim of domestic violence, and you feel that you want to explore this avenue of restraining orders. Definitely don't go about it on your own. Definitely seek the advice of professionals in
that area. Absolutely.
In that area of law. So, in closing, I'm going to ask you a question that normally we don't ask on broadcasts because this is a topic that I'm sure it hits it wrangles it wrangles the hearts and wrangles the feelings and emotion. If anybody is watching and anybody is looking at this and thinking, wow, what would you say to somebody that maybe feels that they are a victim of domestic violence?
You certainly need the protection, because if you are a victim of domestic violence, it means it's not going to stop, and it's going to escalate. And usually, what happens is that it does escalate. So you need to protect yourself, and whatever needs to be done to make the other person, rehabilitate the other person. Like Mari said, is it anger management? Is it substance abuse? Whatever it is, get them the appropriate things that they need, the recourses that they need. Especially if you have children, because if you have children, you're going to be dealing with that person for the rest of your life. So certainly do not take this lightly. This is not one of those things where you take lightly.
You see, and I think that your question touches on something that's a reality for victims of domestic violence, and a lot of times they will suffer and be victims of domestic violence, and you and I can see it from the outside, but they don't realize.
Right. Or they choose. Yes. Yeah. They choose to stay there for the reason, the children, whatever the situation.
Yeah, and
is.
I think most of the time, from what I have seen, is that they don't fully accept. There's no acceptance isn't there for whatever reason, and so when you're saying somebody thinks they're a victim but doesn't know, it's like a different thought process, and even when there have been incidents of extreme violence, that individual still doesn't identify with the words like victim of domestic violence or battered spouse or battered this or battered that. They don't, and it isn't until there's an emotional process that these individuals go through, and part of it is one part of it. Sometimes they're pushed there because most of the time it's a cycle that needs to be broken. They're pushed there either by a child, where the child says, I can't do this anymore, or they see the violence is now being perpetrated on the child.
Right. So it's no longer on me.
They feel I have to step up for my child, and it's like, no, because he did this to the child, and then it's like, oh well, yeah, this has been going on for years, and I didn't think it was that bad. I mean, he would just push me against the wall, or she would just scratch me. She would just slap me. It wasn't so bad.
But he always paid the bills, or we always had food on the table.
And that's why she slapped me. So, and you're sitting there, and even after 20 years of listening to this day in and day out, it's still striking how people don't realize. We've seen this a lot through the years where people don't realize. So it's difficult. It's a difficult question to answer. Sometimes people aren't ready to hear it. Michelle and I obviously do the most that we can in the limited time that we have with the individuals. But the good thing is that by the time they walk through our door, the good news with that is that something has made them realize that this is not acceptable and it's not right. And that's what I always say. Listen, life is short. It's not acceptable for anyone to make you feel afraid, for anyone to be hitting you, for anyone to be demeaning you or making you feel that you need to be subject to this abuse. And that's why I always say you're worth a lot. Life is short. Move on, and try to get help. You can't do this alone. It's difficult. So the good news for us is that by the time they come to see us,
they're ready to do something.
They're ready, and sometimes people aren't, which is a sad thing. So I think that everyone that's out there watching, anyone who knows anyone that they believe is a victim of domestic violence, sit down, talk to them, and make them see that there's another world out there, because sometimes all they know is that world, that cycle that they don't realize what it is. So my advice would be, talk to people, talk about it,
And for them to know that obviously there are processes in place,
and
there are laws,
there are things that
help.
can be done to protect.
There are things to be done. That the life doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to continue living life in those conditions either for yourself or maybe for your kids or your children. There are options. There are options out there.
And I think that one of the things is that we see, like Michelle said it. Oh, they stay there for the children, but in fact, those children are going to be, like Michelle has said it before. It's contrary. It has an adverse effect. You're damaging the children because
isn't that what the child sees?
That's the problem.
And maybe when they grow up, they're like,
they think it's the norm.
This is norm.
Yes.
I mean, I saw this happening.
Right.
All my
this
life.
is how I should treat my wife, or this is how my husband should treat me.
Wow.
So you have to.
Oh man, it gets deep.
Yeah.
It gets deep.
This last question
it's very heavy.
It gets deep.
It's not a legal question, and this is a question that is. It's difficult. It's an emotional question, So I think that, having people around you, which is difficult because sometimes you're isolated, you become isolated, you allow yourself to be isolated. If you see or you believe someone is a victim of domestic violence, try to reach out. Obviously don't put yourself in harm's way, but try to reach out to them, be a friend, lend them your ear, try to show them what life really should be like,
And they will probably need individual therapy, counseling, to be able to recognize the fact that they are in this situation where there is domestic violence, because oftentimes it's hard for them to accept that. Yeah,
I've learned so much about family law in working with you guys. It's simply amazing.
We're in love with the law,
and you both are brilliant. And it's not because you guys are here, but really, you guys are brilliant.
You're making us blush.
Is there a number that somebody can reach you at?
Yes. If you guys need anything, whether it's domestic violence, petitions for divorce, paternity, whatever the case may be, we are here for you. Our phone number is 305-386-2888. That is 305-386-2888. And
of course, folks, any questions, be sure to type them in the chat. Maribel and Michelle are very active on social media, and their staff here, our producers behind the scenes here, that one of these days we're going to get her in front of the camera. She's been monitoring the feeds here. If you're just tuning in, please watch us from the beginning. Very, very interesting topic covering domestic violence and restraining orders and what you need to know. And if you're watching us for the first time, my name is Andy within South Florida. We come to you every week on Thursdays, sometimes Wednesdays, and sometimes Fridays, here live from the offices of Hasbun and Mendoza, folks. Thank you for the love. Thanks for tuning in. Be sure to share this on your network. That little button there on the right that says share. Share this on your network so that maybe somebody can see this, and maybe the person that you reach, you may be able to improve their life going forward.
Yes, that's right.
Ladies, are we going to tell them about next week, or we're going to keep it hush hush? I think we should keep it hush hush.
I think we are set for Wednesday, no?
Yes,
I don't know.
But the topic, send your comments.
Send your comments.
Yeah, put your
whatever questions you got.
Concerns.
Right.
We could do
a potluck. We could, just get a whole bunch of questions that everybody does.
I like that idea.
Yes, or a particular subject, whatever you guys are interested in.
Or we could go into the whole cyber stalking, which has a lot of like you said, layers, and talk about that.
Actually,
and that's a cultural intensive situation.
Actually, today is a great opportunity for somebody to meet you both in person, right?
We are going to be at the luncheon.
So today it happens to be the last Thursday of the month, and this is where our Greater Kendall Business Association has our monthly luncheon. And in about 2 hours, these two ladies are going to be live and present at our monthly luncheon, and you'll be able to meet them, you'll be able to talk to them, get their autographs, and ask them any questions that you may have on domestic violence or any area really of family law.
Yes, come out and join us. We'd love to see you. It's a group of excellent
For
professionals.
more information, go to greaterkendall.com. Greaterkendall.com. The luncheon starts at 11:30. These ladies are going to be there, and you'll be able to shake their hand and meet them and talk to them in person. That's greaterkendall.com. Check it out, the luncheon today. If you're watching us live, if you're watching us later on the replay, forget about it because there's nobody going to be there.
You missed it.
You missed it.
But it's the last Thursday.
It's the last Thursday
of every month.
But you need to be there today. If you're watching us live, you got to be there today. Make plans. Cancel your current lunch plans. Get over there and meet these two ladies.
We would love to meet you guys.
And of course, you can talk to me as well. Thank you, folks, for the love. Andy here within South Florida.
A shameless plug.
Thank you, everybody. Talk
Bye,
to you
guys.
soon.
Have a great day.